There is a moment, a single silent moment, where everything you believed about money stops making sense. And you are standing in it right now, not tomorrow, not after the next paycheck, not after the next prayer. Right now, this very second. And if you stay with me just a few minutes longer, you will leave this place different. Not because of what I will teach you, but because of what I will remind you. Something ancient, something yours, something you forgot the moment the world started telling you that hard work was enough. There is one law, not a philosophy, not a theory, not a motivational idea borrowed from a self-help book. A law, invisible, perfect, and operating in your life right now, whether you know it or not. And this law is the only reason good people, honest people, praying people, working people stay poor their entire lives without ever understanding why. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really feel this question, not just hear it. How long have you been trying? How many mornings have you opened your eyes and counted what was missing? How many times have you budgeted, sacrificed, believed, prayed, and still found yourself looking at the same numbers, the same struggle, the same silent panic at the end of the month? I am not here to judge that. I am here because I know exactly what that feels like. That feeling of doing everything right and still arriving at the same place. Still watching others move forward while you stay exactly where you started. And I need to tell you something that may be uncomfortable at first but will free you before you finish hearing it. You have not been poor because you are lazy. You have not been struggling because you are cursed. You have not been left behind because God forgot your name. You have been operating under a law you were never taught. A law so hidden, so deliberately kept from the people who need it most, that entire generations have lived and died never knowing it existed. And that law has been running your financial life in the background, like a program you never installed but cannot turn off. Think about the people around you. Good people, generous people, people who give more than they take, people who work harder than anyone in the room, people who pray longer, sacrifice more, ask for less. And still, somehow, the money never stays. It comes and it goes. It arrives and it disappears. There is always an emergency, always a gap, always a reason why this month is not the month. And they call it bad luck. They call it the economy. They call it life. But it is not luck. It is not fate. It is law. A law working perfectly, exactly as designed, against everything they are trying to build. Florence Scovel Shinn wrote something that stopped me the first time I read it. She said the invisible forces are ever ready to assist man, but they cannot help him unless he calls upon them in the right way. Not the emotional way, not the desperate way, not the way of need and lack and fear, the right way. And that is the peace that nobody ever hands you. Not in school, not in church, not in any financial advice column you have ever read. They tell you to save more and spend less. They tell you to work harder and want less. But they never tell you about the law that decides, before any of that, what your relationship with money actually is. Your relationship with money is not determined by your bank account. It is not determined by your income. It is not determined by your circumstances or your upbringing or the neighborhood you came from. It is determined by the invisible signal you are broadcasting every single day without realizing it. And that signal is not made of action. It is made of word, of internal declaration, of the quiet beliefs you have been repeating so long they feel like truth. Things like money is hard to keep. Things like people like me never get ahead. Things like I work so hard, but it is never enough. You have been speaking those words not always out loud, but always in frequency. And the law, the one nobody teaches you, has been answering every single time. The law of vacuum, the law of divine supply, the law of spoken word. These are not metaphors. These are not poetic ideas for Sunday mornings. These are spiritual technologies that the wealthiest minds in human history understood and used deliberately. Andrew Carnegie understood it. John D. Rockefeller understood it. And long before both of them, Florence Scovel Shinn was writing it down in plain language for anyone willing to receive it. The supply is limitless. The source never runs dry. The universe is not withholding from you. You have simply never been taught how to open the channel. Think about this. A pipe can be connected to the largest reservoir of water ever built. Clean water, endless water, water enough for 1,000 lifetimes. But if the valve is closed, nothing comes through. The reservoir does not shrink. The water does not disappear. It simply waits, and most people spend their entire lives standing next to a closed valve, wondering why they are thirsty, praying for water, working for water, desperate for water, when all that was ever required was the knowledge of how to turn the valve. That knowledge is what you are receiving right now. Here is what Shin called the word of power. She said there is a supply for every demand, but the demand must be made with expectation, not desperation, with authority, not apology, with the voice of one who already knows the answer before the question is finished. And she gave a sentence, a declaration, a spiritual command so precisely constructed that when spoken in genuine faith, it activates the law of divine supply instantly, not eventually, not after you have proven yourself worthy, instantly, because the law does not wait for you to be ready. It does not require you to have a perfect credit score or a clean past or a heart free of doubt. It requires only alignment. One sentence spoken with authority that overrides the old signal. One declaration that cancels the frequency of lack and replaces it with the frequency of divine supply. And once that frequency shifts, the law has no choice but to respond. Say it slowly, say it out loud, say it with the voice of someone who has finally found the key they have been looking for. I am now linked with the inexhaustible supply of the universe. All that is mine by divine right now comes to me in great avalanches of abundance. Say it again. Let it move through you. I am now linked with the inexhaustible supply of the universe. All that is mine by divine right now comes to me in great avalanches of abundance. Do you feel something shift? That is not imagination. That is the valve beginning to open. Let me show you why this sentence works. Because it is not random words assembled for comfort. Every single piece of it carries a specific spiritual weight. The first law it activates is the law of connection. I am now linked. You are not asking. You are not hoping. You are declaring a connection that already exists in the spiritual realm. You are simply naming it into physical reality. Heaven responds to the one who declares what already is, not the one who begs for what might be. The second law is the law of divine right. All that is mine by divine right. This is not greed. This is not entitlement. This is the recognition that abundance was prepared for you before you were born, that your prosperity is not something you must earn from a reluctant universe, but something you must receive from a generous one. And the third law is the law of acceleration. Now comes to me in great avalanches of abundance, not slowly, not eventually, not in careful measured doses that barely cover the gap, in avalanches. Because when the channel is truly open, supply does not trickle, it floods. Isaiah 45:3 says, I will give you the treasures of darkness and hidden riches of secret places. Hidden riches, already placed, already yours, already waiting in the invisible for your voice to pull them into the visible. The law has never been against you. It has simply been waiting for you to speak the language it was designed to obey. Now, I want to tell you about a woman I know. She was not lazy. She was not careless with money. She was the kind of person who tracked every coin, skipped every luxury, said no to herself so many times that no became her default answer to life. She worked 2 jobs. She prayed every morning. She gave in church every Sunday, even when giving meant sacrifice. And still, every month, the gap appeared. The unexpected bill, the engine that needed replacing, the rent that went up the month the hours went down. She told me once that she had started to believe poverty was her portion, that some people were simply meant to struggle, and she was one of them. That belief is the most dangerous thing I have ever heard a good person say, because that belief is not humility, it is not faith, it is a declaration, and the law was listening to it every single day. When I gave her this sentence, she looked at me like I had handed her something too simple to be real. She had been waiting for something complicated, something that matched the weight of her suffering, something that required years of practice or decades of discipline. And instead, I gave her one sentence. She went home that night and spoke it, not with full faith, not with zero doubt, just with willingness, just with the decision to try one more thing before she gave up entirely. Within 48 hours, her supervisor called her into the office. She expected another problem. Instead, she received a raise she had not requested and a bonus she had not been told was coming. She called me crying, not because the money solved everything immediately, but because for the first time in years, something had moved, something had responded. The valve had opened just enough to let her know the reservoir was real. That is all it takes. Not perfection, not certainty, not a heart completely emptied of doubt. Just enough willingness to speak the word, and enough courage to keep speaking it even when the evidence has not yet appeared. Because here is what most people do not understand about the law of divine supply. It does not work on a delay, it works on a gap. The gap between what you are saying and what you truly believe. When that gap is wide, the law stalls. When that gap closes, even slightly, the law moves. And the way you close the gap is not by forcing yourself to believe something you do not feel. It is by speaking the truth long enough and consistently enough that the feeling catches up to the word. The word always leads. The feeling always follows. The evidence always comes last. Most people are waiting for the evidence before they will speak the word. But the law requires the word before it will produce the evidence. This is the reversal nobody teaches. This is the sequence that changes everything. Now I need to speak to something deeper, because there are people watching this right now who grew up in homes where money was a source of shame, where wanting more felt like ingratitude, where prosperity was something that belonged to other people, richer people, luckier people, people with connections you did not have. And that story, absorbed before you were old enough to question it, became the signal, became the broadcast, became the invisible instruction your life has been following ever since. You did not choose that story, but you have been living it. And you can choose, starting in this moment, to live a different one. Deuteronomy 8:18 says it is God who gives you the power to get wealth, not the power to barely survive, not the power to manage lack with dignity, the power to get wealth. That power was placed inside you, not outside you, not in the economy, not in the hands of employers or governments or circumstances, inside you, in your voice, in your word, in the declaration you make about what is true and what is possible and what is yours by divine right. Shin said, you must make an affirmation of your faith every day until it becomes fixed in your subconscious. Until the subconscious accepts it as fact, until the nervous system responds to abundance the way it has been trained to respond to lack. This is not wishful thinking. This is neurological reality. This is spiritual law expressed in biological terms. The subconscious does not know the difference between what is real and what is repeatedly declared. It simply accepts what it receives most often and builds your reality around it. You have been feeding it lack for years. It built you a life of lack. Begin feeding it abundance, and it will begin building you something entirely different. Now I need to tell you about the second half of this law, the part that most people miss, even when they find the first part. Because there are people who speak this sentence in the morning and then spend the rest of their day speaking poverty. They declare abundance at sunrise and cancel it with complaint by noon. They open the valve and then pour concrete into the pipe with every word of fear, every conversation about lack, every quiet internal whisper of this is never going to change. Guard your words like you guard your money, because what leaves your lips after your declaration matters as much as the declaration itself. Shin said, your word is your wand, and a wand works in both directions. You cannot activate the law of divine supply and then immediately speak the law of insufficiency. You cannot open the channel and then block it with the same mouth that opened it. This is the discipline nobody tells you about, not the discipline of budgets and sacrifices. The discipline of the spoken word, of choosing deliberately and consistently to speak abundance into a life that has not yet shown it to you. Because the law does not respond to what you see, it responds to what you say. Before sleep tonight, speak this sentence aloud. Let it be the last vibration your body carries into the unseen. Upon waking, speak it again before the world can argue with your truth. In moments of financial fear, in moments of panic at the end of the month, in moments when the number does not add up and the need is real and the pressure is heavy, speak it slowly, 3 times, breathing between each word. I am now linked with the inexhaustible supply of the universe. All that is mine by divine right now comes to me in great avalanches of abundance. You are not pretending the problem does not exist. You are choosing which law gets the final word. Here is the sacred challenge. For the next 3 days, speak this sentence 4 times each day. Once upon waking, once at midday, once before sunset, once at the edge of sleep. Each time speak it as one who has already received. Speak it as one who knows the supply is not theoretical. Speak it as one who has read the contract, understood the terms, and is simply waiting for the delivery that is already on its way. You will feel resistance. The mind will calculate. Fear will list the reasons this is not rational. Let it. Do not argue with it. Do not wrestle it to the ground. Simply keep speaking. Because the moment you pass through the resistance, and there is always resistance just before the breakthrough, something will shift. A door will open that was not open yesterday. A number will change that had not moved in months. A conversation will happen that had no logical reason to happen. Not because the universe is performing magic, because the law is simply doing what it has always done. Responding to the aligned word of one who finally understood how to speak it. And when that first sign comes, and it will come, do not dismiss it as coincidence. Do not minimize it. Do not say it would have happened anyway. Receive it. Acknowledge it. Let it be the evidence your faith needed to grow stronger. Because faith that is fed by evidence becomes conviction. And conviction is the frequency that keeps the channel permanently open. That is the goal. Not one breakthrough. Not one answered prayer. A permanent shift in the signal you broadcast. A permanent change in the relationship between your voice and the law that governs supply. You are not poor because you are not enough. You are not struggling because the supply ran out. You are not behind because the universe miscounted your name. You are here, in this moment, receiving the one piece of truth that changes the entire equation. The supply is limitless. The channel is available. The law is ready. And your voice, your real voice, your declared, commanded, spiritually authorized voice, is all that was ever required to open it. I now speak this with you one final time. Let it rise from somewhere deeper than habit. Let it come from the place in you that has always known there was more, that has always sensed the abundance hovering just beyond what the eyes could confirm, that has always felt, even in the hardest seasons, that this could not be all there is, because it is not all there is. It never was. The reservoir was always full, the supply was always ready, the law was always listening, and now, finally, you know what to say to it. I am now linked with the inexhaustible supply of the universe. All that is mine by divine right now comes to me in great avalanches of abundance. It is done, not someday, not when the circumstances agree, not when the bank account first shows a sign. Now, watch what begins to move, not by luck, not by force, but by the ancient, perfect, unbreakable law that says what is spoken in faith must appear in form.